here to do my spoiler review for the paired review for Fight Club. This is a book I never really read. I know a lot of people in my high school read it, but not my advanced English courses. We had a weird other schedule that I kind of talked about last month. But my husband read this book as a teenager I think it was for an English class actually. And he really recommended it to me. He was really interested to see what I thought. And while I've talked to him about it, I'm now here to talk to you about it. So if you saw my spoiler-free review and you're tuning in now, you'll know that I didn't really know much going into this book. I knew the rough concept in terms of what Fight Club was, what the first rule is, which is never talk about Fight Club. So I'm going to be breaking all them rules in this to talk about Fight Club in this review. And the other thing I knew was that Tyler Durden was this weird, toxic man that is involved in the story. What I now kind of grasped is that the essence of the story is what can happen when people who are dissatisfied with their life decide to take charge of it in some way. Do I necessarily agree with the actions they took? No, but I understand in broad strokes what was going on. So with that out of the way, I'll move into my likes really quickly. My first like is I loved the disorientation that the insomnia really gave the story. I loved the mystery it added. It made the story strangely engaging. So even though I actively disliked what the characters were doing, the idea that it would feel like the blink of an eye and then we're in a new situation really kept me into the story and wanting to see where the next jump would take us. My second like is that I loved the story in general. I really enjoyed the writing specifically because it was very easy to follow. I found the descriptions to be incredibly vivid. I almost always had a mental picture of what was going on. The way the main character describes Big Bob, the way he describes the men who are showing up to be part of Fight Club and later Project Mayhem. And I always just had a really good idea mentally of what was going on. My third like is the pacing. Although it was a little bit rough at the beginning, the bulk of the book has really good pacing. The story is quick and snappy, but not really rushed, which was awesome. And it allowed me to get through this book pretty quickly. It wasn't very long. It was 200 and something pages. And now I'm going to move on to my dislikes. My first dislike is that I kind of had a hard time getting behind some of the actions the characters were taking, because while I understood the broad strokes of what they were doing and why they were acting out, I didn't necessarily agree with the decisions and actions being made, and I had a lot harder time reconciling those actions to being the reaction to what they're dealing with. And I think the big thing there is just that I'm not necessarily the demographic that the book is talking about. I'm a different demographic, and so my reaction would be different. And so I really had trouble kind of reconciling that with what I would do, and I just didn't enjoy that aspect and I didn't really engage with that aspect, even if at times I enjoyed it. It ended up just leaving me feeling very confused at times. My second negative is that kind of by the end of Fight Club, when they were escalating into Project Mayhem, and the things that they kept doing to escalate the situations started to feel very samey, very almost more like a gimmick, which is what makes me think this book is more satire than a true commentary or belief of the author. Unfortunately, because of how repetitive and samey it felt, I ended up enjoying what was going on a lot less, and it is part of what led to my confusion with not being able to really reconcile the actions as being a reaction to the issue they were dealing with. That's really all I have to say there. I kind of lost the thread of that conversation. If I think of it again, I'll come back and fill in the void because I feel like I didn't quite finish my thought. My third negative is that I kind of had a hard time getting into the book. There was a really awesome cold open scene. It was tense, it was high action, lots of tension and anxiety involved in it, but it was followed up by a bunch of background, so the story started great, had a few chapters that were just information and background, so it slowed way down. And then after that, the pacing was consistent through the rest of the story. It was quick and snappy, like I'd mentioned in my likes. With those 6 points out of the way, I'll now move into my characters. I really enjoyed having kind of like that blank slate narrator. It not so much for me, but I can see how it could be really powerful in pulling in the reader into the role of the main character and really getting them involved and engaged in the story. I did, just because he was described as kind of like as an average Joe part, like just one of the cogs in the machine. Like, I think that would resonate with a lot of readers. And then the only other thing I'm going to say about the characters here is I loved how like strange and flawed all the characters were. Like, you have characters like Big Bob, who's like essentially you'd think not a terrible person, but then you find out, because you're like, oh, he's just a bodybuilder that suffered testicular cancer. But then as the story progresses, you find out these people are more and more flawed, and more people are trying to break out of the shell to no longer be a cog in the machine, and that's when people start showing much scarier versions of themselves. It was really interesting to watch that progression with almost everybody. And that is all I have to say for the characters, so I will just move into my wrap-up. I'm giving this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Overall, I did really enjoy this story. The broad strokes of what is being done really grabbed me, even though I really had troubles reconciling the actions on the individual level to being a good reaction to the issues that they were dealing with. Again, I really think that is just a me thing because I'm a different demographic than the book is talking about. And my dislikes, while specific and annoying, weren't really game-breaking. They didn't pull me so far out of my enjoyment that I couldn't finish the book, which is always good when that doesn't happen. And so I don't know who I'd necessarily recommend this book to. I think there's a very specific group of readers that are going to get a lot of enjoyment out of it. But I don't know that I could just broadly recommend it. And with that, I will leave you guys here, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.